It really made me think about the '90s, and it made me think about how it was. Because honestly, I went to go see this movie at the theater, and I remember popping for Vanilla Ice when Vanilla Ice was actually cool. I remember, just like loving this whole thing. The only thing that I thought was different was just that the first movie was a little bit grittier, if that's the word.
Yes.
It felt more like real New York. This one felt more like
A caricature of New York.
no, it felt more like an accurate depiction of the cartoon. It felt like it was
Yeah.
focusing more on the cartoon as opposed to them just introducing Ninja Turtles to New York, like in the first. Um, and then, shout out to Jim Henson
Yeah.
because they were. I think that he had recently passed away, and he made a lot of. He was just the guy that made like a lot of puppets, and was able to do a whole bunch of different characters at that time. I mean, we're talking the mid '90s, so CGI wasn't really that great. You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
I personally love the way that the movie started, especially with the little Asian kid that was a great martial artist. I wonder whatever happened to that kid. I was thinking about that as I was watching this movie. Like, whatever happened to that guy? Because I don't remember seeing him in anything else. I couldn't.
Where are they now?
Facts. Where is that guy now?
He's
I don't
watching our show, and we thank him.
Probably, probably, probably. I believe so. I definitely believe that. What would you guys think about this movie?
I mean, I agree on that opening. That's the opening of this one when they're doing the fight scene in the like underground mall is probably my favorite opening of any movie. They just set it up so well. What I thought definitely going to talking about it feeling more like the cartoon, like everyone was just eating pizza.
Uh
You
huh.
know, I'm not from New York, but I know New Yorkers love their pizza. You know, they have a fondness for the pie, but
What we used to.
that prevalent, even in the '90s, I don't know. You know, I think they kind of forced that one. But still, you know,
You know.
turtles go with pizza, pizza and turtles. You know, it's like peas in a pod. So I get it. But getting over that, definitely that scene opening, loved it. Everything about it. Um, and also, yeah, this was I didn't catch it when I was a kid, but watching it this time, I noticed that they did not use their weapons as much throughout this whole movie. You know, in the first movie, I mean, Leo was slashing with those katanas left and right. Um, you know, even Donatello, you know, with the bow staff. And here it was more, you know, martial arts, you know, hand to hand. You know, very little weapon use, and when it was more blunted. You know, Raphael was using the size backwards with the hilt instead of the point. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there was a time where Raphael, I mean, not Raphael, with Leonardo, he was using batons instead of his katanas. You know, there were even points where, you know, Donatello, who has probably, arguably, the least lethal weapon, uh, wasn't even using his bow staff. Yeah, so it was a little weird watching it again and seeing that and noticing it. It's like, oh, you know, I'm sure, you know, back in the '90s, you know, it had to do with somebody's parents uh, saying that, oh, it's too violent. You know, the turtles are gonna make our kids,
Yes.
slap people in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm sure somebody's parents or a bunch of parents got on that. But
That's true.
yeah, I thought that was
You could
pretty
see
interesting.
you definitely could see that with this one because they certainly did add a little bit of extra cheese on that. No, and you know what? I'm not gonna lie. Like the yo-yo part, I really, really appreciate.
Yeah,
I just thought it was hilarious how he literally just slept the yo-yo and then did around the world and just off like five people. Like I thought that was just great. I mean, which is actually possible if you have the right yo-yo. But like just the fact that he did that, I thought was just amazing. Like what I became an even bigger fan of Michelangelo because I use both things, yo-yos and chucks. So it's just great, great, even great. So I really popped for that part. But I just think it's great how you mentioned there really was no weapons.
Definitely. Baxter Stockman.
Um, Vic, I think you made a great point. This movie is well, and actually, I think everybody is in agreement. This movie is a live action cartoon, right? Of
Mhm.
the then popular Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right?
Hmm.
Shout out to that show that I used to love to watch. Far more than the first one that came out, I think a year before 89, 90. I can't remember when it released in theaters, but
It was 90.
was it 90? Okay,
Mhm.
so like a couple of months before, right? If not a year. That one, it has much more of a realism, a darker tone. Arguably, if not for the subject matter, you could say that it was of the films of that era. It was very 80s, but it was very um, not grimy, but grungy, New York, dirty.
Hmm.
Um, it had a feel to it, right? It was its own thing. It just so happened to have turtles and the foot and Shredder and so on and so forth, right?
Right.
I think the acting in the first movie is far better. I wasn't on that episode. I'm sorry about that. I am on this one, and I'm comparing the two. And I'll say that the acting on that one, because of the tone, the tonality of the movie, was far better. This one, for me, it took me out at times. And the reason I bring all that up is to say that originally growing up, I would have said that Secret of the Ooze, Part 2, which we're covering tonight, was the better and my favorite. Not the better, but my favorite of the two.
Hmm.
But looking back on it, because it's so cartoony, and it doesn't acknowledge the difference in medium of what it is, right? So you go originally from the comic, then you go to the cartoon, and you have certain liberalities that you can take, and you have to change certain things, right? The comic is black and white, the cartoon show obviously what they're trying to do is make money off of it in a different way, so they give them different color head gear and everything like that so they can distinguish them and everything, and they market it a different way, and they change some of the characters and everything to make it more palatable to whatever audiences they thought that there was at the time, right? But then when you go from cartoon to live action, you can't get away with certain things. I mentioned this before in some of the older and other videos that we've done on the platform, that you have to acknowledge the differences when you change a property from the different medium, right? From book to screen, from cartoon to live action, from live action to cartoon. You
Right.
can get away with a lot of things when when they're animated, but when they're live action, you can't. And this movie, it just drags for me, and there wasn't the same enjoyment I had as a child. Whereas some movies from childhood that I can go back now and watch, and it's good because they take the material serious. And I just don't think they took anything serious in this film, and that's why you have some people who
And
are taking
see,
it serious, like the pseudo, Baxter Stockman, the scientist in the film. But then it's so much scenery chewing that it just drives me crazy. But go on, Doctor. What do
I
you want to
see
say?
that's where I think actually I found that I like this one more.
Okay.
Originally I liked the first one more because it was, a bit more realism, more gritty. But looking back at this one, and, especially when you say dragged on, like I felt when I watched this one, it wasn't forced. It flowed really nicely. I could watch it. I didn't get distracted by other stuff, like, oh, let me pause and do something else, because I'm just kind of getting through it like a slog. No, I really enjoyed it from beginning to end. And I think because of the lighter tone, the jovialness of it, it brought me back to remembering, I was a kid when I was watching the Turtles. I was enjoying it. Made me want to get the toys, and I think also definitely it was more of a showcase for Donatello, who really didn't get as much of a showcase in the first movie. He
Definitely,
wasn't really as fleshed out as far as his personality was, and I
definitely.
think that they overcame that with this one, kind of showcasing him more, and that's probably another reason why I really like it. But I think the campiness of it was its strength, because of the subject matter. It's the turtles. It's
Mhm.
a cartoon, and they made it more cartoony. Now, would I have liked it to been more weapon use? Yes, definitely. Um, I think that they are less when they don't use their weapons. I mean, that's one of their signature things. That's what's kind of besides the color coded, headgear. That's what's distinguishing between them. Their weapon use. Definitely their skill sets as well, but that's when you kind of get into the minutia. But it's really their weapon use, and they don't really showcase that. That's one of the I would say one of the drawbacks of it. They're all martial artists; they can all punch and kick. But you've got Mikey with his nunchucks, spinning them around, knocking stuff out. You got Donnie using the bow staff in creative ways.
Mhm.
And I think that they really missed the ball showcasing that. Trying to appease whatever to make it less violent. But the campiness of it, I think that they really captured what the turtles were, um, using that to in this movie as far as the tone goes. I think that was a great choice.
No, I
It really
personally would.
elevated.
When it comes to that, I personally agree because I think that the relationship between the turtles and Splinter was highlighted a little bit better in this movie, as far as a relationship between a parent and teenagers. My favorite example of that was when Michelangelo was well, just the whole flips thing. 10 flips now, 10 flips now, da da da, this and that, and then that whole situation where um, he was,
One,
you know, and then
two,
yeah, when
three,
Michelangelo's just front and he's like, yeah, exactly.
one. Oh,
Just that whole thing was great, and then like at the end when they come back, where you seen bringing it back to the first movie, like where you seen and like no, da da da, blah,
uh,
blah, blah, and all of a
like
sudden
lying through their
they're
teeth.
back, they're teenagers, so
They're
then
teenagers coming back to their dad. Oh yeah,
try
you good.
hard. Oh, 10 flips now. I remember, go ninja, go. And they, it's just things like that with that I really enjoyed it. But to be honest with you, there's a part of me that wishes the original April was there, Kino was Casey Jones, and then they would just continue on that story. It clearly just eliminated that whole thing. When I saw this as a kid, I was mad that they replaced April,
Yeah,
um,
I
because
see that.
I really appreciated just having Casey Jones, having April there, having just that whole situation with them.
Mhm.
I felt like that was just one of the great ways to end that first movie. And since this was a continuation of the first movie, I was sad to see that they took that whole thing away. I mean, I got nothing against Kino. I thought he was an okay character, but I would have much rather had a continuation of Casey Jones for that spot, personally. I mean, I see why they did it. Like, it's a martial arts thing. You know what I mean? And like, so I get that whole situation. But yeah, I just think if there were like a Snyder cut of this movie, then it would definitely be adding Casey Jones and April O'Neil like the originals and continuing that whole thing.
I think they could have fit Casey in there with Keena. I think they would.
Probably.
I think they could have worked it.
I mean, I feel like they never should have taken him out. I mean, I was always saddened by that because I think
Mm.
he's one of the best characters in the show.
I know we have to cut to a commercial and preview what we have coming up next on the network. But before we do it, let me just say, and I'll be the first one to admit it, when somebody says something that makes sense, I'll be the first one to say that I was wrong. And I wish I could say that right now, but I want to thank my co-hosts for agreeing with me by saying all the things that they wish were in this movie that wasn't, and all the characters that weren't. You want to know why? Because this movie is not as good as we think. Everybody talked about nostalgia, but we're here to watch Teenage Mutant and not nostalgia. Go to Adrian Veidt if you want nostalgia, right? Okay, this is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: Secret of the Ooze. I have no idea what movie they just watched, okay? Perhaps the mushrooms on their pizza were special. I don't know. But this is what I'm going to say.
Getting
This
so
movie, if it were the first one and it started the tone of the series, right? One, two, and three of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that would be fine. I have no problem with that. The problem for me lays, and again, it's nothing against the movie. I don't think they came onto the set. We're gonna make a crappy movie. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this is the sequel to an original, and the original sets the tone. Okay, much like people might have an argument. I'm not trying to get all into that with the Last Jedi coming follow after Force Awakenings even though that's plagiarism in and of itself, but still the tone
Mhm.
is completely different.
Yeah.
Where are we going here? If you look, especially at that time, at sequels at that time, you had to do, even today, if you can't do the same quality that the original did, why are you doing it? Yes, of course, it's a money grab. This is a children's property, and they always want to make money off of kids because kids have that. Well, their parents are going to take them, and so that way they have disposable access. Then
Mhm.
it's teenagers and young people because they don't have any kids, right? And lastly, it's everybody else, right? So this is a money grab. That being said, the first one made money, so there was no reason to make it buffoonish. We see that that was the wrong decision because when the third movie comes out, granted, the popularity of the Turtles had waned by that point because it came out around mid '90s. Okay, but still, it was a viable enough property that they made a movie out of it. The quality of the effects went down; they didn't put enough money into it, and it was so over the top cartoonish that it was ridiculous, and it was panned. And even fans of the Turtles didn't like it. Okay, I just want to say this, and then I'll give my final thoughts when once we come back from the commercial break. This movie is to New York because I think Rashad brought it up. Everybody's eating pizza. Everybody but a brown or black face. Shout out to Friends New York, okay? Except in the last season when it got close to the year 2000 something, whatever, right? But anyway, this movie was filmed by the creators of Friends who copied that from a black show. But anyway, this movie is to New York. Jason takes Manhattan is to New York. Absolutely nothing. Okay. For a second, I had to ask myself, where did they film these exteriors? Because clearly it was filmed on some back lot. But when they have all these people eating this cold pizza that wasn't made by an Italian anywhere, and let me just say this: when it comes to food, you can cancel me because that's how I get. Okay. If you understand that, when it comes to food, cancel me because I only like certain people making certain foods. Okay. Anyway, I know we got a commercial break, but I just don't understand what my co-hosts were talking about. Everybody's entitled to their opinions, though. Let's go and see what we're talking about next on the platform.
Must get through that air shield.
We will, sir. Once we kidnap the princess, we can force her father, King Roland, to give us the combination to the air shield, thereby destroying planet Druidia and saving planet Spaceball.
Everybody got that?
For old nose!
Only one man and his trusted companion can save planet Druidia from disaster.
Okay, Eagle 5, coming in.
Lone Star.
First, they must learn the secrets of yogurt.
Yogurt. I am the keeper of a greater magic.
The Force?
No, the Schwartz.
Spaceballs, the movie.
This Sunday, season 2 of UPR Battles continue, and we have a banger this Sunday, folks. Representing classic video games, we have Sonic the Hedgehog, and he goes against Marvel's favorite webhead, Spider-Man. This is going to be an interesting one, folks. Tune in this Sunday, 8 p.m. on Instagram Live. Don't miss it.
A golden scepter that can open the gates of time itself. Now, in their darkest hour, come 4 brave fighters from another time, another place, another species. They're back, and they're back in time.
Hey, dudes, check it out! We're in Shogun!
Once before, demons defeated my ancestors. Now they've come back for me.
Talk about your quantum leap!
My cannons can destroy these monsters, my lord.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
Help, I'm a turtle and I can't get up.
Yeah. That one was just a reach. But anyway, welcome back, everybody. So we're continuing to talk about Turtles 2. And I think we're going to start talking about whether it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So who'd like to go first?
I'll lead this off. But before I get into that, I just want to say that it was really fun watching it again because there are some things that I still pull from in this movie. There's at least one quote that I have used, in the last couple of years that came from this movie. When they're watching April O'Neil do her bit about the the cleanup. Raph's like sitting there annoyed because he can't get his way. He sits next to Mikey, and Mikey, is crunching loud, and Raph's like, "Hey," pointing to where his ear would be. You think crunching louder, I can still hear out of this one, and then he crunches louder. When I sit next to the executive consultant when he's eating, if anyone out here knows how the executive consultant eats, there have been times when I've pointed to him and I've said, "You think you can crunch any louder? I can still hear out of this one." So that one definitely holds a special place in my heart. Shout out to the executive consultant for always keeping that one fresh in my mind. It was also something I didn't notice because I probably didn't know about him back then. Michael Jai White has a uncredited appearance in this when they first were showing the foot recruitment. He's standing there in the crowd, doesn't really say anything, or maybe you think grunts or something. But I noticed and I was like, oh, hey, I know that guy. But I think, I think I've said it before. Even though this didn't match the tone, and I do understand how Baxter Stockman, mentions that because you think about Batman 1989, and then Batman Returns. Same theme, same tone throughout. Made back then. Sequels do typically, at least sequels that work do typically have that, but thinking back on the IP being the Turtles, it being cartoon, initially a comic, but then the cartoon and now a movie. I think they probably should have started with a campy, and kind of kept that campiness. And I think this was still a great sequel, regardless. It was definitely fun, just as fun as it was for me as a kid. I had the same fun watching it this time, so it's definitely a thumbs up for me. Boom, boom, thumbs up.
Okay. I'll go. Well, clearly, you guys know how I feel. However, I will say this. I wish that Bebop and Rocksteady were the actual monsters. I thought that the two monsters looking at Shredder as a mother was hilarious. I thought that just the whole aspect of them being babies and being dumb and all of that was just funny. Um, One thing that I found really funny, it was in the beginning when Kino was flirting with those girls, and and then the girls were just like, in your dreams, and then he just said, well, I'll dream about something a little bit thinner. Like, that doesn't hit at this time, but that shit was just too funny. That was so Al Bundy. It's not even like, that just hit me. Like, it's like, wow, man.
That was definitely a comment from the time period.
Mm-hmm. And in the '90s, the pizza was good. Italians made it, so it was good. Now it's not. You have to find one of those places that are left over in order to get it. So I understand the whole thing with the pizza. Um, and the Vanilla Ice spot, the Super Shredder spot. Shout out to Big Sexy Kevin Nash for doing that spot. That was cool. But yeah, it was just extra campy. And then even in the end, when they jump in the water, I love being a turtle. They hit because mind you, look, there was so many T-shirts and stuff being sold back then. So I kind of see what you're saying because they really had to keep it campy because the merch was just insane.
The merch was insane.
The toys, the shirts. I have a Ninja Turtles lunchbox that I still use. I mean, not from then, but of the same IP. Like, this stuff has been evolving over years. We're talking about stuff that's in the '90s, and they're still coming out with movies and games and cartoons and stuff for this stuff. So, shout out to the Turtles for just staying relevant for so long. Seriously, because wow. And when it comes to this, it's clearly a thumbs up. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go.
Ninja rap.
Well, listen, the next Doctor, he mentioned it, and everybody's talking about nostalgia, and he said that this movie had quotes. I was starting to think about some of them for this movie because he says he still uses them, so I wrote some of them down, and the N word, excuse me, ninjutsu. He said, no, some people use ninja for the N word now, but it's ninjutsu. I read it wrong. I'm sorry. I apologize to you, Night Owl. But I wrote down some of these quotes from this movie because it brought back so many memories of different scenes in this movie. For instance, I remember that scene now at the end when they go, "Now I know why you cry," and they wipe away the tear. Then that other scene over the lake where they go, "McFly, you Bojo, hoverboards don't work on water unless you got power." Then that other one when they say, "You're gonna need a bigger boat," or that line when they go, "This house is clear." And last but not least, "There's no Dana, only Zool." Yeah, I thought about all those quotes while I watched this movie because I said I enjoyed those movies far better than this one. This is a sequel, and sequels have rules, much like everything else. If it's following something, you can't do your own thing. If it's Jurassic Park 2, nobody's there to see the mammals. Bring the dinosaurs back. If it's Aliens and it's following Alien, there better be a spaceship and there better be more aliens. The first one's singular, the second one's plural for a reason. Did Aliens 1986 do that? Yes, that's why it's good. Now listen, I'm not dogging my co-hosts. They know what they're talking about. These are professional men, okay? Professional men. But I am going to talk about somebody from this movie as I gear into my grade for this film, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. And let me just say this, much as I said earlier, I'm a humble man, and I must apologize. Originally, a couple episodes ago, I made reference to a character, Min Kwan, from Power Rangers Then and Forever. And I said how she was the most annoying character. Well, move over, men. There's a new one in town. And their name is Kino in this film. Yes, Kino. I know you can do roundhouses and wheelbarrow kicks and fold yourself into a waste bin. But we're talking about men in suits dressed as turtles. You can't do everything. And when they tell you to run, you should just run. Okay? Kino, I want to see a movie for the fourth film of the original between you and Min Kwan about who can annoy me the most. Who was the most poorly written character between the two? And that, I guarantee, will be 2 thumbs up because it's exactly what I want to see. But tonight, as far as my grade for this movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, and shout out to Chris Docker. We thought he was missing. But Chris was just making that paper, and shout out to you, Chris. And you're absolutely correct. Aliens is perfect. Except I wasn't in it. But as far as this movie, it is a thumbs down. That's right, 3 thumbs down on this show. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze. Thank you, Chris, for being attentive as always. I know you're backstage working hard. See Chris, we didn't have the commercial, but see Chris next episode for Singing in the Rain where he'll do that solo. Also look out for he does amazing edits for his amazing edit of Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan. Yes, I know what...
The end of beginning, the numero uno, the chances of winning. I do it again. Follow no other, I'm setting these trends, consulting.
Chris with the BS. That's right. This episode was brought to you by the letters B and S. If I could turn my head sideways like Chrissy, shout out to you, and go like this and then turn it this way, I would say B and S. But this show was brought to you by the letters B and S. But wait till you see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. You're gonna be like, James, I apologize.
That's
but anyway, this movie was very popular. All joking aside, very popular. It was a favorite of mine growing up. It does not hold the test of time, in my opinion. But that said, I can't knock anybody for liking this movie because it was the movie growing up. Okay, so I gotta keep it real. But thank you for tuning in tonight. I want to thank again. I joke around with him, but he has that cool mask on. I don't know where he got it, but I'm gonna find out and then post it and act like I always knew. So that's what I do. Shout out to you all. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope that you tune in again. And thank you, Chris, again for editing the Search for Spock. You did a great job whenever that comes up. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.